Hello, I fixed the microphone, finally. Figured out what it was. So last week, if you were watching the Q&A, there was a buzzing over the microphone, and so I had to use the internal mic. Stupidly, having bought 2 more cables for the mic, messaged support, called them up, fiddled around with all the settings and the ends of the cables in case they'd been bent or anything, it was because the charger for the laptop was plugged in, causing some kind of interference. So I fixed that now by simply unplugging the charger. Also, if anyone's wondering what this orange thing is, great life hack. It's called Sugru, S-U-G-R-U. You can buy it for about £3 and it reinforces your cables, your chargers, that kind of thing. So helpful when these chargers cost £85 a piece and they break so easily. So get a hold of some Sugru. You put it on like plasticine and it dries up within 24 hours and then it just reinforces things. And you can use it for little bits to hold your toothbrush or whatever as well. Great. So, guys, nobody is watching yet, but we are going to talk a bit about fear setting today. It's a new technique that I discovered recently and wanted to share it with you guys, as well as some Q&A. So the first thing is that fear setting is the shadow side to goal setting. And the risk with goal setting only is that you end up kind of living with your head in the clouds and not actually considering the obstacles that come in the way. So what fear setting does is it really takes these unconscious fears that we have and we're afraid of happening, brings them out into the conscious and actually defines them, makes them as clear as possible. And then you realise that they're not as scary as they seem once you start to put things into perspective. So I got this idea from Tim Ferriss, really good guy, worth checking out if you haven't seen his podcast and stuff. Very, very good at synthesizing a lot of information and being very Pareto efficient. So taking the 10 to 20% of stuff that produces the 80 or 90% of results. So really helpful. So what is fear setting? The first thing, or how to do it really, is you define the worst things that could happen in your life. Okay, so you can divide your life into the 4 quadrants that we talk about, so body, being, balance and business, if you want to be really systematic about it. But the best way is just follow the golden thread. Pick the one thing that is most at the forefront of your consciousness right now and try and define it. What are the worst ways that it could go wrong? What doubts and fears and what ifs all come up? What would be the permanent impact of that? And will it be the end of your life or not? And also it's important that if you want to really get the most of this, you can actually type these out or write it down. Some people find writing is more therapeutic and allows you to be more unfiltered. I'm just impatient and I type quite fast, so I prefer to do that. But anyway, define that fear and what's the likelihood that it's going to happen and what would be the permanent impact of it. So once you've done that, then we move on to prevent. So we then want to list how can you stop those things from happening. What steps could you take to start repairing the damage? What can you do to get things back on the upswing? Even if it's just temporary, what's kind of the stop gaps that you can do? And the chances are, once you start thinking of these solutions, it's easier than you imagine to get things back on track. Let's say the worst case with your diet is that you go on an absolute 3-week binge, you gain 20 kilos of body fat, a bit like Fat Nick. If you haven't seen that, I'll post in the comments of the link for that. In fact, I'm going to set a reminder to do that. Fat Nick. So yeah, check out that video. It's pretty horrendous. You then end up being so obsessed with food during that binge that you push all of your close relationships away and you're like, no, I don't like you, I hate you, I just want pizza, I just want cake. And you isolate everyone, you gain 20 kilos. 3 weeks later, you're in a terrible state, you're lying on the floor, McDonald's wrappers everywhere. What do you do? Well, the steps to repair that damage are not it's not as permanent as it sounds like. It's not going to be the end of your life. You can start to repair the damage socially by calling up your family, friends and saying, look, I'm really sorry. This cake demon took over me, caused me to go on a massive binge, on a rampage, and I said some things that I might regret. I said that cake was the only true love in my life when actually, really, you are. And so you can start to repair that damage. Maybe it's not going to be 100% perfect, but you can start to build things back up. Diet-wise, you're 20 kilos heavier, you can plan out a diet to start losing that again. Easy come, easy go. So if you could then spend the next couple of weeks on quite an aggressive diet, you'd maybe lose half of the weight that you've regained, and then the following 8 or 10 weeks you can start to gradually lose the rest of it. And take advantage of that time as well by training more. So you can see what I'm getting at here is that you're picking ways that you can then actionably start to recover that potential damage if the worst case scenario were to happen. So then consider what are the outcomes or benefits of those repairs. If something happens, then what would it be? In fact, I'm going to move on to repair there. So if you were to repair each bad thing, what would be the benefits? It might even bring you closer together with the people that you've damaged that relationship with, because they've seen a vulnerability, they've seen that you've sought refuge in them, you've said, you know what, I was wrong here. It might bring you guys closer together. What are the potential outcomes as well? So if they are internal, might be that you've lost the weight again, you've gained the confidence that even if you have a blowout, you're actually robust enough to be able to get back on it and be able to restore your physique. How likely are these to happen? And what would be the impact on a scale of 1 to 10? So how likely is it, if the worst case scenario happened, that you could still produce a relatively good outcome? So other things to consider would be, if you were to be fired from your job today, then what would you do to get things back under financial control? What are you putting off out of fear? So usually fear is the thing that it is a signal of the thing that we most need to do. And if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I've got that big task or that big project that I need to do, and it keeps getting put off, that's usually the thing that if you were to spend 2 hours doing just that, you would have the most successful day that you could envisage for that day. So you get the picture of this, that you define what the worst outcome would be, you figure out ways that you can recover or repair the damage if things go wrong, and then to prevent that from happening, here is what we do. So first of all, list what defences can you put up to stop those bad things happening, now that you know that even if they did happen, you'd still be able to fight them off if there was a problem. And also consider, what is it costing you to not do the thing that you think you're supposed to be doing? So I'll repeat that. What is the emotional, the financial, and the physical cost of you postponing action and not stepping forward with making that progress? Remember, the pain of regret is so much more than the pain of failure or the pain of discipline. That's the Bruce Lee quote, isn't it? Suffer the pain of discipline or suffer the pain of regret. You get that choice all the time. And you don't want to look back 10 years later and realise that you've wasted your life not taking those steps towards your goal out of fear, or out of... what's even worse is that out of fear of something that was so undefined and actually not as scary a monster as it seemed, but because it wasn't brought into consciousness and defined and action plans taken out, then it just was held at arm's distance in a kind of fearful, let's hope this goes away kind of mindset. And so then the final thing is, you just telescope out that 10 years and know that with 100% certainty there is a path of disappointment and regret if you don't make that action, if you don't take that risk. And the greatest risk is inaction, because there is a definite downside to doing that. So what are you waiting for? If you can't answer this question, this is from Tim Ferriss, that can't answer this without resorting to the previously rejected concept of good timing, then you are afraid, just like the rest of the world. Measure the cost of inaction, realize that unlikelihood and repairability of most missteps, develop the most important habit of those who excel and enjoy doing so. Take action. So hopefully that is helpful for you guys. Another way that you can start mapping this out further, if you're writing this down, is list the costs at a 6-month point of not acting. List the costs in a year's time of not acting. Physical, financial, social, emotional. And in 3 years' time. And that's when it starts to really sting, because you can think, 3 years ahead, if I'm still not making progress with this, then I've wasted that time. I'm going to look back at my 40-year-old self or 50-year-old self and be like, damn, this was a waste. So thought that was a cool concept. Let me know your thoughts. If anyone goes through the fear setting process and you're not afraid to post the results or the cliff notes on the group, please do. Very keen to see your thoughts on that. Cool.